Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, episode 57 of the Mystery Reviews. I gave the hints bad reboots and vampires, and as the final hint, I gave the address 199 Oak, which was in this movie. Now, if you haven't figured it out, there was a vampire movie in 1985 that has since then spawned a virtually unknown sequel and two reboots. One with the same name, same simplified story, but the other was called Fright Night 2: A New Blood, and yet it wasn't a sequel to the redo of Fright Night. So yes, Fright Night is indeed the film that I am reviewing tonight, the 1985 version. Now, this movie was done right. This movie was a horror movie, a thriller, a drama, a suspense. They say that they actually mark it as a comedy on Vudu, and it's like there's comedic elements, but I wouldn't say it's a comedy. Now, the 2010 one, I think it is, 2010, the one with Anton Yelchin and Colin Farrell, that one has comedy in it, sure. However, this movie was pretty solid in the horror genre. How you doing, Junebug? Good to see you. But yeah, so let's get into the talking points. And I'm getting freaking texts already. Yeah. Anyway, so there was a vampire movie made. This would be I didn't see this movie until 1989 when I was 4 years old. And it was also the first movie where I have seen a woman's bare breasts. I mean, this was my first titty shot movie, basically. And the movie, yeah, I already went over it. Now, this movie is directed by Tom Holland. Not that Tom Holland, I know what a lot of people are thinking. Not the Spider-Man Tom Holland actor, but the director, Tom Holland. And stars Chris Sarandon, who actually had a bit cameo in the 2010s reboot. William Ragsdale, who played Charlie. Amanda Beers, who played Amy. Roddy McDowell played Peter Vincent, Vampire Killer. And Stephen Jeffries, who played Evil Ed, with Dorothy Fielding as Charlie's mom. And Jonathan Stark, who played Billy Cole, the ghoul that looked human. So yes, this movie begins with an audio of a vampire movie. We're introduced to the teens, Charlie Brewster and his girlfriend, Amy Peterson. They're making out, and they're using Roddy McDowell's Fright Night TV show as audio cover so that they don't get caught by the adult downstairs. Now, Charlie starts feeling her up a little strongly. And she's like, "Stop it!" And then he comes on a little bit more strongly, and she's like, "I said stop it," and they break apart. Now, he flips out because he's kind of pissed off. It's like, we've been going out for a year, and all I ever hear is Charlie, stop it. I mean, way to lay on the pressure, man. I mean, if you did it in today's time, you would probably get your ass kicked. Although, in today's time, women are mostly thoughts that would actually probably be the one to want to have sex with you right off. Fright Night, the actor who played Spider-Man, did a really good job directing it. Good. That was good. Okay, I'll give you that one. Good to see you, Junebug. What day this week we did right? They actually made Marcy from Married with Children look pretty cute. Yeah. Now, she actually agrees to get it on with Charlie after he basically says, you know what, we've been going out for a year and all I ever hear. And she's scared and whatnot. I mean, most women back then were scared to have sex for the first time. But she eventually gets in. She gets on the bed, and he ends up seeing two guys carrying a coffin outside. Now, if you pay attention to how this scene is shot, she gets on the bed, starts undoing her blouse, opening up, taking it off. Then when it cuts to him looking out the window, it shows her still undoing her blouse. And then it shows her, or cuts back to her, lifting up her shirt, saying that she's ready. And when it cuts back to him, it's back to normal continuity. So there are continuity errors in this film. And he tells her that there's a guy or two guys outside and they're carrying a coffin. She happens to look at the movie that's on the TV, and it's a bunch of guys carrying a coffin out on the moors of England. And she's like, sure. And they're on the moors, right? And he's like, Amy, I'm serious. So am I. Do you want to make love or not? And because Charlie's too engrossed in this, she gets huffy, she gets pissed, she gets out. And so, yeah, she's genuinely pissed off. I mean, her boyfriend just pressured her into sex, and then he's just fucking around and doesn't want to have sex. What kind of guy does that, you know? But then again, this dude is a horror buff, he's a fucking horror nerd, and he finds this fascinating. So, you then get introduced to the mom, who, I'm sorry, if I was this kid's mom, and I hear his girlfriend first want to make love and then you don't, it'd be like, what the fuck are you two doing? I'd be asking that. I mean, these kids are in high school. I mean, yeah, I know most kids probably did that, but I was raised right. I didn't do it until I was with the right person. And even then, that person didn't turn out to be the right person. So, yeah, anyway. I wouldn't mind having Charlie Brewster. Yeah, the Mustang was great. I mean, paint job on it was kind of but dude had good taste in cars. So he's checking out the door, completely ignoring his girlfriend. She's like, bye, Charlie. And he's like, yeah, see you later. Turns out, slams the door. And it's like, come on, man. Pay attention to your girlfriend. She needs you. She needs your moral support. Tabletop junkie, how are you? Good to see you. So, they learn that the next door neighbor, or the next door house, now has new ownership. And that it's two guys that are living there. And so the mom's like, probably gay. But that's seen a little later. But you also hear that, or you hear over the news in the police band that a woman was found mutilated and bite marks on her neck, and then somebody tried to bite somebody in a store or some shit. And it's like, are you freaking kidding me right now? So you understand that there's some weird shit going on in this film before the main stuff goes on. Now, next day at school, we get introduced to Evil Ed, which is Stephen Joffrey's. And Amy's still mad at him, slams into her, or slams into Charlie and walks away. And you also learn that Ed doesn't like to be called evil. He's like, yeah, you're the one failing trig, not me. And when Charlie gets home, he sees an attractive woman get out of a taxi cab. Now I was like, this woman is seriously high end. I mean, probably a hooker. And before anybody comes at me saying, why would you make such an accusation? Because they literally call her a prostitute after they report her murder on the TV the next day. Just saying. So it's not really an assumption for all you PC nerds out there. It's firsthand knowledge of the film and its information. Anywho, she's looking for a 199 Oak. And pretty attractive woman, and So when Charlie goes in, he's talking. He's like, "Ma, what do you know about the guy next door? He's got another guy living with him, probably gay." "No, I don't think so." "Why? What do you know that I don't?" "Nah, nothing. I gotta go study, Ma, because he's failing trig. He needs to get his trig up." And so, as he's studying trig, he hears this blood-curdling scream from next door. And then the light go out. And it's like, well, now, things are getting interesting, aren't they? So as he's at school, Amy tries patching things up with him, and he's so happy and whatnot, and she's so happy. And then she starts talking to him when he sees the hooker's face on the TV, and it says murdered underneath. And he starts paying attention to it, and then Evil Ed comes in. He's like, "Hey, Charlie, did you hear? Second killing in 2 days. And get this. Both victims had their heads chopped off. Can you believe it?" And he's like, "You're sick." And Amy is standing behind him trying to get his attention because she's being ignored again. So she grabs this random student's friggin' spaghetti sandwich. Charlie, smash right in his face. And I'm like, oh my God. And freaking Evil Ed is laughing at his ass. He's like, "Oh, you're so cool, Brewster." I mean, I can't stand it. Now, that is a big comedy moment in this film, but you gotta take her side. I mean, she's trying to talk to your ass, and you're freaking still looking at the damn TV like you were last night, ignoring her. Of course she's gonna freaking react again. Now, I can't see it, but Charlie Sheen actually apparently auditioned to play Charlie Brewster. Well, he was younger in the 80s, so, yeah. Now, there is even errors with that scene, with the sandwich in the face thing. Now, let me get my talking point here. Yeah, it's the barbecue sandwich. Now, she smashes it in Charlie's face. First shot, the tomato slice falls completely off his face. Then one slice appears on his right cheek. And then in the final shot, no more tomatoes. So it's like, there's a bit of a continuity mistake. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about 80s movies. You can have these continuity mistakes. They would barely affect the story. Barely. At all. People are now a lot more analytical with their thoughts in movies and whatnot. Well, people like me anyway. But I also can watch this movie and completely enjoy it. That's the wonderful thing about this movie, you see. So, then we get to the next scene. And, let's see here. Charlie comes home. He tries sneaking over while Billy Cole's painting the windows black. And he sees that Charlie's heading towards the entrance to the basement from the outside. The storm doors. And you get that nice little 80s jump and creep out. He's like, "Hey, what you doing, kid? Get out of here," and whatnot. Kind of that thing where he's like, "Yeah, right in your face," and whatnot. Brad Fiedel, the composer for this movie, who also did the first Terminator movies. I love his score. I wish he did not retire very early and hasn't done anything since 1997. I wonder if he also did the score for Silver Bullet, because there are some elements in the score of this film that I remember hearing in the film Silver Bullet. So, who did the score for Silver Bullet? Nope, it wasn't Brad Fiedel. It was Jay Chataway. But, yeah, there are soft moments in the score that are reminiscent to some of the softer moments in the Silver Bullet movie, which I also did a mystery review on. But yeah, so he gets scared back over to his home, and he's very sure that there's going to be another scene. And we get the booby scene. I mean, he's spying on this house. He's munching on freaking chips. He's blaring his TV volume just so he could stay up, but he's also focused on that window. He's also very focused. And then he ends up falling asleep. Well, he tried everything to stay awake, folks. He tried porn because they do a nice little sweeping shot across his floor, which was a nice little porn mag. And then you get the chips and other stuff. And the TV is also out at or after hours. I mean, this was back in the 80s when the TV channel or cable channels would cut out after a certain hour. Well, then we get the booby scene. My first introduction to bare breasts at the age of 4. Yeah. And Charlie is acting like a freaking 8-year-old. I mean, he's like, oh, wow, perving completely out until he sees the fangs. And I'm like, okay, either this kid isn't getting any, which obviously he isn't because he tried to have sex with Amy, but then he didn't want to have sex with Amy, and that's why Amy's so fucking pissed off at him. So, he's perving on the freaking neighbor. I mean, it's almost a wonder why he didn't just wank it out right there, but because the fangs were revealed, and it's like, oh shit. The question is, how did Jerry know that he was being spied on? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because he stops just as he's about to bite this woman, and he's like, and then he's pissed off because somebody's spying on him. Now, also, when the girl opens up her bra, she actually looks dead at the camera. So it's like, not good acting, girl. I mean, you're supposed to, like, be in a thrall, but you're not supposed to look at the camera. These are the kind of shots that ruin a shot, but they kept it anyway because, well, they were boobs. You're not supposed to be focusing on her eyes. I mean, unless you're an adult who can actually multitask, you know? But, so yeah, Jerry pulls the curtain shade down, and you see that, or does a zoom in on his nails, and they're long. So yeah, gotta go, man. Good stream, and glad I caught you online. Thank you, Tabletop Junkie. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. So then he goes to wake up his mom, and he's looking out the window, and he sees that Billy Cole, Jerry Dandridge's neighbor or roommate, is already pulling the Jeep in the back and loading up some trash bags. Well, to be fair, I'm not really looking at her. I'm looking at the camera. I'm more looking at. Yeah, I get it. But yeah. So they're loading up the body, and then you see Charlie has run out the door. He's at the fence staring at this. What's going on? And then you get this POV scene of Jerry Dandridge. Now, as he's running, and as he jumps off and it starts to fly down, which is basically what you are understanding him to be doing, you actually see in the corner of the shot the cast and crew's legs and feet and the stand that they're on. And it's like, oh, damn, that's a slip. But it's there and then it's gone really quick. So it doesn't really harm the scene too much. It is a flaw, and it does take away from the objective quality of the film, but it doesn't harm the film on a subjective level. Let's just say that. And then he tosses the purse to his partner in crime, basically. Now, you see Jerry Dandridge throughout this entire movie, Chris Sarandon, eating fruit. I mean, he is just ripping into a bunch of fruit, man. And you wonder, why would a vampire be eating fruit? Well, Jerry Dandridge, Chris Sarandon, the actor, He decided to do this because he figured his character was part fruit bat. That's the reason why he's sucking on fruit. Because his vampire side is part fruit bat. Isn't that interesting? Now, also another interesting fact about Chris Sarandon, he wanted nothing to do with this movie when it was first pitched to him, but then when he saw the script, he's like, I changed my mind. I want to be in this movie because this movie looks or sounds freaking awesome. I mean, yeah. I can recognize a vision when I see one, and this movie kind of delivers that, you know? He gets to play a vampire. Who wouldn't want to fucking play a vampire, you know? I mean, I'd love to play a vampire if I was a lot more fit and didn't have a fucking beer gut on me. But then again, I'd probably be like that freaking hillbilly in True Blood's first episode. Yeah, sure, I'll fuck you, and then I'll fucking eat you. And it's like, yikes. Vampires come in all shapes and sizes, I guess. But anyway, back to the story. His mom ends up outing his ass because she realized that he's like, Fangs, what the... So she goes out and is looking for Charlie, and they realize that they might be being spied on. Well, Jerry sees him, picks up on him pretty quickly, tosses the apple that he just bit a humongous chunk out of, and starts walking over toward the apple. Well, Billy Cole is ready to go after Charlie gets up and starts running, but he stops him. He's like, eh. And his mom thinks he's absolutely out of his fucking mind. Well, he's like, Ma, I don't need hot cocoa. I didn't have a nightmare. He did kill a woman over there. Are you feeling all right? Mom, I'm not sick. And so he tries telling her he's a vampire. A what? And then you see Amy do the same thing. A what? That sounds awesome. Beer gut vampires a lot better than anything Hollywood puts out now. Yeah, true. And so he goes to Amy. It cuts over to Amy, and he's like, a vampire? Haven't you been listening to anything? She thinks this is a joke to get him back, or to get her back. I mean, is this some sort of trick to win me back? And she has that hopeful smile on her face. I mean, the woman who played her, Jessica Bierce or something like that, she did a good job acting in this film. I'll give her that. She did a good job acting as the sweet, innocent girl. And later on, when she is vamped out, she actually plays a good vampire version of herself, too. I mean, it's really, you see a very good dichotomy there. The woman has range. Now, he decides to go to the police, and they're like, you can't talk to a police like that, they'll lock you up. And so, yeah. He goes to the police, doesn't tell them they're a vampire, but he honestly has he witnessed 2 women go into that house, and 2 women are dead. So, yeah. But it doesn't go his way, you see. Billy Cole plays it real smooth, and he's like, look, I could prove it is. Let's check down in the basement instead. What's down there, Charlie? Yeah, Charlie. What's down there? Charlie doesn't want to answer. Okay, well, I'm going to show you the trash bags in the back. A coffin. That's right, a coffin. I saw them bringing it. A coffin. Yeah, and you'll find Jerry Dandridge in there, sleeping the sleep of the undead. He actually went there with the cop. You'll find Jerry Dandridge in there, sleeping the sleep of the undead. Ooh. I mean, they played this up so fucking bad. This kid actually said this in front of a fucking cop. And the cop's like, oh my God. And they play it up, and he's like, get you out of here, a coffin. I'll freaking show you a coffin. He's like, you gotta believe me, Jerry Dandridge is a vampire. Yeah, sure, and I'm Dirty Harry. Look, you don't ever come down to the precinct. If I ever catch your ass down at the precinct again, I am locking it up forever. And then he sees Billy Cole coming out on the upstairs banister outside, looking down at him. And so he checks his digital watch back in the 80s. Digital watches were a thing back then. And he's like, oh shit. So he runs to Evil Ed because Evil Ed's a nerd. Evil Ed knows his shit. And Evil Ed also thinks that Charlie's a fucking fruitcake. So he's like, just tell me what to do. What are you talking about? I mean, freaking. He's like, come on, man. I got $8. I'll freaking give it. It's yours if you just tell me how to do it. Don't call me evil anymore. And so he's like, okay, when do you expect the vampire to attack? And his hands are up like this. Now, he then puts his hands down when he asks, where do you expect the vampire to attack? The next cut to Charlie shows Evil Ed's hands back up like this. And it's like, yikes. There's another continuity mistake. The widescreen version of this movie really shows the mistakes, folks. Objective mistakes, that is. And so he gives him a cross. And he's like, get some garlic, get some crosses, but your best protection. A vampire can't enter your house unless he's been invited by the rightful owner first. He plays it up for Charlie. And he does such a wonderful job. And then Charlie leaves and he's like, thank you, Evil, thank you. Yeah. And then as soon as Charlie's gone, he's like, fuck. He just starts laughing his ass off. So Charlie gets home, starts doing some studying, whatnot, gets called downstairs, and Jerry Dandridge has been invited over by his mom because his mom is freaking sorry about last night and whatnot. It's like, oh my God, dude. Seriously? So yeah, Chris Sarandon plays this so freaking creepy, but he plays it kind too. You can sense what he is saying to Charlie that his mother's not picking up on. Yeah, I mean, now that I've been invited, I'll be dropping over anytime I want. Kind of creepy at first, with your mother's permission, of course. And so, yeah, this kid is totally picking up on the fact that he's going to die. This kid knows he's about to be killed because now this vampire has been totally invited into his house. Well, Charlie is scared shitless that night, and the wind is blowing. And I love the practical effects of what they do with vampire effects and whatnot, where they show this big shadow just moving across the window. That is pretty cool shit. Back in the 80s and the 70s and whatnot, they did practical effects that sold the horror element of the story. I mean, so Charlie's hearing the scraping against windows, so he goes down with his cross in hand, ready to fend off the forces of the undead. And what he finds is not a vampire, but tree twigs scratching against the window. But up in his mother's room, Jerry Dandridge is indeed in the house, looking at his mother sleeping, and he's basically figuring, I mean, I could, but won't. So he closes her door and then pulls it more to jam the door. And then he goes into Charlie's room, starts whispering strangers in the night. The musical themes throughout this film, folks, are actually pretty well done. I mean, during certain cue scenes, you get music or certain musical numbers that are perfectly fitting. So Charlie goes in, now that he knows he's not been, or that there's no vampire in the house, and he walks up over to the window. He sees the light is off. Well, Jerry Dandridge is slowly getting out of the closet, or coming out of the closet, walking toward him. Yes, I know. And you see him get right up to Charlie, and then Charlie finally notices there's somebody behind him. Turns around, boom, grabs him by the throat. We don't want to wake your mother, Charlie, because then I'd have to kill her too. Right? And he just openly goes after him. Kind of like how they did it in the Fright Night reboot later on. I actually like the Fright Night reboot to a degree because you had Jerry Dandridge being extremely smart in that film, too. I mean, what kind of idiot? Or if you can't be invited into a house, well, make sure there's no house. But back to this one, he throws him into his closet. We don't want to wake your mother, Charlie. Then he throws him very loudly into a closet, busting up the closet. This kid is lifted up against the wall, kicking a portable, whatchamacallit, foosball, no, not a foosball table. I forget what they're called, but one of those games where you clank the ball and whatnot, or you smack the ball up and to keep it from getting to the bottom. And he's like, you should have just left me alone, boy. I mean, spying on me, disrupting my sleep this afternoon, telling policemen about me. Now, also, Charlie has nailed his window shut at this. Yes, pinball. Thank you. I know, right? But yes, thank you for pinball. And he shatters the pinball glass to his pinball game. And then he's dragged over to the window. Now, while he's struggling, you see a photo of Amy fall to the floor. Pay attention to what I just told you, folks. Her photo fell to the floor. So Jerry uses his vampire strength, flicks or breaks the lock to the window, forces the window up with very minimal effort, and he then lowers Charlie out the window slowly and getting ready to choke him out to drop him. Well, Charlie, in his desperation to find a good grip, grabs Amy's photo. It flies out the window, and the fence post stabs through Amy's face. And he looks at Jerry like, I'm going to kill you. Well, just a question. How did her photo suddenly get back up on her or on Charlie's dresser? Remember, it fell to the floor. So there's a lot of freaking continuity errors, folks. This movie has a ton of them. Now, he grabs a pencil. Now, here's a revealing error. Revealing errors are where they reveal the tricks of the trade of a film. Well, as Charlie is getting choked, he takes a pencil, puts it through the guy's hand. Well, if you stab a pencil into a guy's hand who's holding you like this, what's liable to happen? You're going to get stabbed in the neck. But it works because Jerry Dandridge starts spinning around while he's like, oh! And then his creepy vampire hand with really long nails turns over. You see how deep this pencil stabbed through him. Stabbed through his hand. How does Charlie even not have a hole in his neck and is bleeding out through the jugular at this point? Because that would have happened. But don't think too much about it. This is an 80s horror movie. Don't think too much about it. So then you see Jerry Dandridge with his other vampire hand pull the pencil out of his hand, turn around and start going, or he's in his full decked out vampire makeup. And his hair's all different, and he's like, no! Literally sounding like, no! That's how he sounds. As he's yelling at Charlie, and suddenly, as he's yelling at Charlie, and it goes over to Charlie, the wind starts blowing him into the wall, and this blue light starts glowing around Charlie like it's supposed to be issuing out of Dandridge's mouth. But then the knocking comes, Charlie, hey, Charlie! His mom's awake now, and it's like, how are you not picking up that there's some weird shit going on in another room, woman? And she's like, my door is stuck. And you see Dandridge turning to Charlie. He's in a lesser vampire looking state, more Jerry Dandridge looking. He looks back at his mother. And then when he cuts back to Jerry Dandridge again, he's back in his human looking form. And he shows the hole in his hand and he crunches it. And you hear this right in his hand. It's really, I don't know if you heard that, but yeah. You hear a very loud popping and grinding bone sound. Basically letting Charlie know, I will get you, boy. If it's the last thing I do. And then he walks out and you see the shadow just fly out. So you understand that he vamped out of there. And so Charlie, still not worried about his mother. His mother has to get out of the freaking room herself. Charlie, what the hell is going on? Oh, nothing. I just had a nightmare. Oh, I had a nightmare too. I was in this white sail, and then suddenly I realized I was stark naked. And it's like, okay. And then you get a hint. She's like, oh my God, I got to get some sleep. I start the night shift tomorrow. 3 a.m. is not good for my complexion. Pay attention to the fact that she is working the night shift tomorrow, folks. Because that comes to play later on in the film. It's a nice little hint. But this movie is seriously freaking nuts going forward. I mean, when you when you have all this stuff going on, I mean, let's see here. There's a whole crew of other mistakes that I jotted down some other mistakes and whatnot. Yeah, the next mistakes aren't even till much later in the film. So back to my other talking points. So, yes, after Jerry runs, he turns on the TV and he sees that Peter Vincent's on. And he gets all, as he's watching, he realizes that he's kind of scared from watching all this shit from a vampire going after a woman. So he goes to turn it off when the telephone rings, and he picks it up, and it's Jerry. And he's like, I know you're there, Charlie. I can see you. So Charlie looks out his door across the way, and you see that Jerry's there smiling at him, so he drops the phone. What's wrong, Charlie? Scared? And also, when his mom was awake, you hear this crashing sound outside, like something going through the trash. Well, I just destroyed your car, Charlie, but that's nothing of what I'm going to do to you tomorrow night. And so he then closes the curtain over to his house. And you also saw that Billy Cole was serving his master by wrapping his hand up like a good little thrall. So then he sees Peter Vincent Fright night. And you see that Peter Vincent's about to kill a vampire. He's like, I do believe I've fought them in all their forms. Wolves, beasts, bats. And I have always won. And so he gets all excited. Go, Peter. Go. It's like, yeah, why don't you just whip it out and start wanking, dude? Yeah, you destroyed the Mustang. How could you? Well, he doesn't want him getting around, does he? He doesn't want him leaving town. He wants to kill him. Now, I should say that there was also a weird mistake earlier in the film, in the beginning of the film, where you see him watching Fright Night, where Peter Vincent is a vampire killer. And he brings up, he's like, I am Peter Vincent, vampire killer. And he has this stake in his hand, except that the pointy end is pointed toward Peter Vincent. It's like, dude, your stake is backwards. How are you going to ram that through that woman's heart? You know? It's just ridiculous how some of the errors are in this film, folks. But I love this movie still. I don't hate any of the movies that I do a mystery review on. I love these films. I grew up with these films. Some of them. But yeah, so now he's been threatened. And so he decides he's going to go to Peter Vincent. Yeah. So he tries to go to Peter Vincent, and Peter Vincent's walking out of the studio. I have just been fired because people want to see, or don't want to see, vampires anymore. They want to see some brutish psychomaniacs hacking up young virgins. And it's like, I thought the virgins lived throughout those horror movies. But it's because he's getting bad ratings. But he's like, I still believe in vampires. That's nice. If there were a few more of you, my ratings would have been higher. In fact, I got one living at my house right now. Pardon me. I mean, how do you expect anybody to really react to the fact or to news that you have a vampire living at your house, you know? So he tries telling him, and now Peter Vincent's thinking this dude is completely fucking nuts. So he drives up. Roddy McDowall plays a great character in this. He really does. I mean, he's one of those older actors that knows he's classically trained, and he does it very well in this. Well, don't you know Peter Vincent is that kind of vampire hunter? He doesn't need the pointy end. Yeah. Now, Peter Vincent's actually a looks like I'm having internet problems. Again, sorry. Hey, if you're late, you're late. You can always watch the rest of it going forward and then catch the replay. How's my internet, folks? Is it coming through? Is the signal clear? Let me know. Because it looks like I'm getting a bad signal thingy right up on the screen here. Okay, it's gone now. So, yes, Roddy McDowall was amazing. One of those actors that I actually truly do kind of miss. Exactly. I wonder, is Roddy McDowall still alive? Or Roddy McDowall still alive? That's something I really should ask. Is Roddy McDowall alive? Oh, sadly he died in 1998. That is sad. Yeah, he died in 1998. Do you need to take care of Jerry? Maybe he's messing with your internet. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that, folks. Other people are using the internet in the house, so yeah, it's going to screw with my internet signal while I stream. So I am sorry about that. Not much I can do about it. So, okay, the internet's back. Sorry about that, folks. And it looks like I lost my viewers because 0 viewership right now. But anyway, the show must go on. So, Amy is now going back to Charlie's house, try to patch things up with him, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And because Evil Ed's there, and he's like, "I'm checking on Rooster," and she's like, "Yeah, I probably want to make fun of him," and she's like, "Oh, you do like him!" So they get up to Charlie's room, and he is decked out his room. He's dead. Internet is fuzzy again. Sorry, folks. It's actually cut out on my end, too. Is the internet good right now, folks? Because it's showing low signal on my end. His last role was Even a Bug's Life. Oh, nice. That's cool. Well, let's see if this helps. Close there. Seems to be good. Knock on wood. Okay, good. All right. So the internet's back to normal. Sorry about that, folks. It's just too many people are using the internet right now. Anywho, back to the thing. So Amy and Ed visit Charlie, His room looks like the inside of a freaking church, decked out with all sorts of religion iconography, crosses, those religious sets you put at the bottom of a Christmas tree, the Virgin Mary hanging everywhere, and candles. Nativity sets, that's what they're called. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know, it could be worse. Remember dial-up? Yeah, I know. But unfortunately, we have such poor internet that anybody who picks up a fucking TV downstairs, nobody has any consideration in this house. Except for me, it seems. But anyway. So they're like, what are you going to do? Dandridge is a vampire, and I'm going to kill him before he wakes up. That's murder, Charlie. You can't murder a vampire, Amy. They're dead, remember? Well, what about Peter Vincent? I already tried him. He's useless. And whatnot. Well, what if we try him? And it's like, fine. I mean, no offense, but you have to have faith for crosses to work, for any religious iconography to work against a vampire in this universe. So, hope you've been brushing up on your Bible, boy. But anyway, so Ed and Amy go to Peter Vincent, and they're like, boy, that boy is insane. Oh, dear. You're not friends with him, are you? I'm his girl, or she's like, I'm his girlfriend. Well, I could pay you money. How much? I have a $500 savings bond. I'll take it. Because he's been fired and he's looking for a job in a film in a major role and whatnot. And so, he gets, or he's been paid, or he's paid, and they go over, or they call up Jerry Dandridge to do some vampire test on him, like an orgy of the damned. You use your mirror, and you couldn't see that he didn't have a reflection, so you knew he was a vampire. Well, then they call up Jerry, and Jerry's just waking up, and he's munching on some more fruit. He's like, oh, well, I'm always willing to help young people, but I'm afraid crosses are out of the question. You see, I've been reborn recently. He says he's a reborn Christian and crosses would be sacrilegious. Ask him about holy water. What about holy water? No. Tell him it's just regular tap water. All he'll have to do is sip it. He's like, okay, yeah, I understand. Well, how about not until 6 o'clock this afternoon? You see, I'm going to be out until then. So he's like, well, I guess we don't have to go out tonight after all. His friends are bringing him over to prove that I'm not a vampire. It is so freaking hilarious. Hey, try living in rural Kansas with internet. Somebody could fart in the internet. Yeah, same could happen up in the Adirondacks in New York, bub. So they come over and they do the vampire test, and they're simply doing this so that Charlie is not proven to be some sort of nutcase. It's a good gesture, but it is done in such a bad way. So they bring him over and whatnot, and they're like, so are you sure this is holy water? He actually takes a gulp, or he actually gulps before he says holy water. Oh, yes, and he tells Charlie, he's like, took it to Father Brennan and blessed it down to St. Mary's himself. And so Jerry holds the holy water up to the fire before taking a drink out of it. Now, a lot of people wonder because the holy water doesn't work. He slogs it down, nothing happens. And a lot of people are wondering, why didn't the holy water work? Well, was it just tap water? Was it, or this is never explained. There are Reddit forums that are going over the different theories. Well, in certain folklore, heating up holy water will burn the blessing out of it. And I'm thinking to myself, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But it's folklore, folks. I mean, they honestly don't give any real reason as to why the holy water doesn't work. So apparently it was just tap water. Who knew? Then he's like, then it wasn't blessed. Are you calling me a liar, young man? If he's not a vampire, have him touch this. He brings up the cross, and you actually see Jerry move back, and you also see his buddy Billy start to move in. However, Peter Vincent just grabs the cross out of Charlie's hand before anybody can notice. And he's like, come now. And he's like, yeah, Charlie, you've already caused your friends quite enough pain. You wouldn't want to cause them any more, would you? Well, I kind of brought it, fire hell, or hellfire, I'm guessing you meant. But yeah. Somebody could... And so he's like, so are you now convinced that I'm not a vampire? Yes. The way he says it, yes. Okay, well, that's so good. I'm glad. And he's talking with Amy. Now, earlier in the film, when the cop was over, Charlie's looking at a painting that is a painting of Amy, or somebody who looks like Amy, because this painting is very old. And as they're all leaving, or getting ready to leave, Peter Vincent checks with the mirror and sees that Mr. Dandridge has no reflection. He's like, huh! And he drops the mirror, and you hear it break, and he's like, everything wrong, everything all right, Mr. Vincent? Yes, I'm sorry. It's just my clumsiness. Are you sure? Yeah. And yes, and then he rushes them out of the house, and they're all getting ready to leave, and Charlie's like, you saw something in there that convinced you he was a vampire. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Please, Mr. Vincent, this is important. You have to tell us. All right. He didn't cast a reflection in my mirror. Satisfied now? I mean, the way that he says, he didn't cast a reflection in my mirror, but then they cut to a wider shot when he says, satisfied now, it just shows too rapidly of a change in demeanor. So it's like, yikes. And he's like, Mr. Vincent, you have to call the police, Mr. Vincent. Shit. And, well, Ed's had enough, so he's going home. No way. We walk Amy home first. All right, fine. And as they're walking home, we cut back to Dandridge. She looks just like her, doesn't she? And he's walking away kind of sullen. Well, one good thing. They'll never believe him now. Well, then Jerry accidentally steps on the piece of broken mirror that was left behind. Yes, that is something that I was actually going to bring up, which I forgot to. Thank you, Junebug. Vincent Price and Peter Cushing were actually the inspirations behind the name Peter Vincent. I don't think they were actually asked to be in the film, though. Peter Cushing was very sick at the time and was not doing a lot of roles, and Vincent Price was really, really busy. Oh, all right. So they're down in the city and walking Amy back and whatnot. And after Jerry Dandridge realizes that he stepped on the mirror, that's like, they'll never believe him now. No. So he now realizes he's outed still, or he's been outed. He doesn't know how many of them they know or know. And it's like, hey, let's cut through. So the kids are going by an alley. Hey, let's cut through here. No way, man. Lights and people. That's what we're here. It's like, oh, come on, dude. I can't. Or freaking Evil Ed's had enough of this. Sorry, I'm grabbing my charging cord because the laptop's dying. He's like, no way, man. What if Jerry Dandridge is a vampire and he thinks you know it? Would you walk down the alley then? Oh, fuck you, Brewster. And so him and Amy are walking away, and they're like, well, or should we leave? No, vampire's going to want him anyway, probably get blood poisoning. And so freaking Evil Ed screams out, so they run back and they're like, Jesus, I warned him. You gotta kill me, Charlie, before I turn into a vampire and give you a hickey. And Amy and him are laughing, and it's like, you actually believe me, you poor dope. And he's like, oh my God, that is so freaking hilarious. And so they're like, oh my, or he's like, you're going to get yours, Evil. Oh yeah, some vampire's going to come and rip my throat out. There are no such thing as vampires, you fruitcake. And as they're walking away, he's walking, and you see above him, because the nice little POV again, and Jerry then flies down as Evil Ed's walking away. And then you see Jerry look back, and then he starts following Ed. Well, Ed realizes he's being followed, but he thinks that it's Amy and Charlie trying to get back at him. And then he sees Jerry coming after him. He realizes, oh, fuck. They even asked Christopher Lee to play Peter Vincent. Holy shit. But he read the script and couldn't see himself in that role. Well, yeah, not a vampire killer because he's mostly a vampire, you know? Now, this movie does sell the horror in this film. Like, when Jerry is going after Evil is booking, man. Every time he gets away, Jerry's still right there. He's just walking, but he's still just the same amount of length behind him. And then scares him, or Evil runs himself into a corner, and the mist starts building and building and whatnot, and then recedes, and he thinks he's safe. Hello, Edward. Ah! Right behind him. And he's like, you don't have to be afraid of me. And they won't bother you anymore or beat you up. All you have to do is take my hand. Go on, Edward. Take my hand. And he sees that it has nails, longer nails. And he takes it, and then he gets bit, and he lets out a scream, and they're like, what was that? Oh, it's probably Evil just playing around. Well, Amy, wait, what if something seriously happened? Charlie, you're not going to fall for that again, are you? And then she screams out, cut it out, Evil, it's not funny. Well, then you see this big old powerful thunder and shit, and a big old boom. And they're like, please tell me this is a power outage. Because all the power goes out around them. Well, what else could it be? And then you see this transformer box next to them. All the wires are sliced up and ripped up. And then they realize, oh, shit. So, yeah. They're trying to get away from Jerry, and Jerry's showing up at different ends of the street. And so they cut into this alley, get into this club. Now, the song that is playing in the club as they're being chased by a vampire, The Armies of the Night Are Coming by Sparks. And I'm like, you know, that is just that is another perfect song for the situation. Do you know what if they do it right? I would not mind seeing William Ragsdale come back in a legacy sequel. I hate that term, but don't make it like Halloween, the lazy Michael Myers movies. Yeah. They actually did a sequel to this movie where he was in college, and it was about Jerry Dandridge's sister going after him, of all things. But it hasn't really seen the light of day much. I would love to get my hands on the digital copy and the physical of the sequel because I would like to see it. I really would. So they cut through, and they're trying to call the police, and Amy is getting scared. She's realizing, oh my God, they're not careful, or Charlie's not crazy anymore. This dude's showing up at opposite ends of a freaking alley, so yeah, maybe he is not crazy. They were going to do a third one, but the Mendez brothers ruined that. Yeah. So, as Charlie's trying to phone up Peter Vincent, because they cut to Peter Vincent, or before he calls him, well, Peter Vincent's packing up shit to get the hell out of town, and there's a knock on the door. He's like, it's me, Evil Ed. He's like, why are you here? hurry up, there's a vampire in here, let me in! Well, Peter Vincent grabs him, freaking yanks him, and then he's like, what are we going to do? No, what are you going to do? Not me! And he has the fangs, and he scares him. He's like, starts laughing. I used to admire you, you know that? Until I found out what kind of a fake you really were. Peter Vincent, a great vampire killer. And when he hits him with the cross on the head, he hits him with the actual cross perfectly aligned with his head. But when they pull away in the next shot, he has an X on his head because the cross is now at an angle, you see. And I love the effects, man. How they managed to get steam coming out of his head and whatnot. And then the eyes, the teeth, they do it all really well. And Evil Ed is then scared out because of the cross, and he jumps out of the window. So Peter Vincent just won the day without killing Evil Ed, though. But he's now scared scared pretty much to death at this point. And Amy tells Charlie, I paid him to be there today. And he's like, we have no choice. Now give me his number. So, while he's dialing up Peter Vincent, Dandridge is in the club. And he's walking different back and forths and whatnot. And in a couple of shots where he's by the column mirrors in the club, you actually see his reflection, which, yikes, it's another continuity error. But I do like how he goes to her left, disappears around or off screen to her left, and then comes in from the right. And it's like, oh, damn. And this is where you see vampire seduction at its, or him really in the full thrall of a vampire seduction with Amy. Amy goes, or is pulled out onto the floor. He's getting feely with her and whatnot, getting ready to bite, and she's like, She tries to run. He pulls her back in, puts her back into the thrall, and Charlie comes up after failing to convince Peter to help him. And Peter's like, I'm sorry, Charlie, I cannot do it right now at the moment. Because he's literally sitting in his chair scared to death. Because he just survived an attack from an actual freaking vampire. And he's like, he then sees that Amy's gone. So he goes after her and sees Dandridge there. He's like, let her go. Well, she's too thralled in. And he kisses her. He's like, you filthy son of a... Now, if you're watching this film really carefully, as he starts saying, you filthy son of a, his hand is already up to catch the fist. It's like, really? You guys got to work on this back in the 80s. Now, hold on a minute. I had to readjust my chair. He catches the fist and he starts crushing. He's like, shouldn't lose your temper, Charlie. It's not polite. You can't kill me here. I don't want to kill you, Charlie. I want you to bring Peter Vincent over to my house. Just the two of you. Tonight. That is, if you ever want to see Amy again. And then he throws him down and he tries taking Amy out of there. Well, Charlie gets over and he's like, let her go. Well, these two bouncers, this big freaking tank of a dude, grabs Amy and Charlie to get them away from him. And Jerry's like, she's mine. He's like, you chicken, man. You go somewhere else. Out of my way. And the other bouncer's like, move me. Well, then Jerry's just has no more patience for this shit. So he starts growling, reveals his hand is all clawed hand. And then the guy looks up at Jerry again. And he kind of almost looks like Henry Cavill, with the red eyes and the teeth showing. I mean, if they ever did do a Fright Night, a real good Fright Night reboot, Henry Cavill, I'd actually like to see Henry Cavill play a vampire. See if he could actually do it. I'm pretty sure he could. But yeah, it's just Chris Sarandon just really looked like Henry Cavill with the red eyes and the teeth. And in this moment when this guy realizes he's looking at something totally not human, he yells towards the other bouncer who's hiking Amy and Charlie out of there. Now, there's this scene, in the scene, you see Jerry go like this, bring his hand up, and you see the guy's like, and then he just it's like, what? What? I mean, you should have just had him grab the bouncer, like by the shoulder, and just bring his hand down and claw or slice the dude's throat out. Well, then the other guy's heading down. He's already there, and he grabs this like 350 pound bouncer, and is just effortlessly lifting him up, and crushing the dude's throat, and then throws him. Now, the song that is playing here is "You Can Run" or "You Can't Run from the Beast Inside." And the lyrics are literally, you can run, you can hide, but there ain't nothing you can't do or you can do. While they're trying to get away from Jerry. And everybody else is panicking because they just saw 2 people get killed. Heck, I could see Henry Cavill as Dracula. I could too, or some other vampire. I mean, honestly, it's interesting. It is really amazing, the special effects in this movie made by hand and human rather than somebody's laptop. Exactly. Now, there was some digital stuff put in, but they were done late, or they were done differently than doing them on a computer. You know? So, actually, no. I think everything in this was either stop motion or done differently. Yeah. I only think there was one real digital shot in this film, and that was the bat flying down into the cellar. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So they're trying to get out. They get separated on the stairs, and Jerry's there, grabs Amy, thralls her again, and is getting her out. And as Charlie looks down between the stairs, those gaps between the stairs and clubs and whatnot, you see that Jerry's up there, and then you get the zoom into Jerry's face smiling at Charlie, and you get the no hand reaching out, no, and whatnot. And he gets down there, and you see Evil Ed just doing this little laughing as a vampire with his cross, as Jerry and Billy have Amy in the front seat driving off in the Jeep that Billy owns, Billy Cole. Now, that's how you do special effects correctly. You have human hands make the effect, and you use CGI to enhance them. That's what CGI was originally meant for. Yeah. So, let's see here. We then get him, or he runs to Peter Vincent's house. And Peter Vincent gives him the cross test, and he comes in. He's deathly afraid. And he's like, "You're Peter Vincent, the great vampire killer. That's just a character in a movie. That isn't even my real name. I'm terrified, Charlie. I'm sorry, but I am." I mean, he tells him flat out. He's terrified of this. And whatnot. Now, let's see here. Reload. There we go. Now, the acting in the scene with Peter Vincent, or after Charlie goes to Peter Vincent, Andy McDowell really plays that well. Hash Brown released the Peter Vincent movies. Yeah, I know, right? They really should. Now, the acting between Charlie and Roddy McDowell in that scene where he's trying And to convince him, he's like, you got to help me, Peter. If you don't, Amy's going to die. Me too, probably. I need your help, man. Please, Peter. And he's like, I'm sorry, Charlie. I mean, he can't even look at Charlie. It's shame. Or all the shame, the fear. He's too scared. This is a guy that everybody looked up to, and he's playing a freaking frightened man. He's terrified. And that's actually very good acting in this scene. So then, well, we get the seduction and biting of Amy. And she sees that painting of herself, and Jerry explains, like, she was someone I knew a long time ago. And he starts seducing her on the floor, and as he puts his lips toward her neck, she flinches. So he's like, or he's amused at this. And so she goes to speak, and he stops and does this little movement with her, or with his finger, which is like a serpent going downward, which is part of a thrall. If you can use your hands to kind of thrall a person. I mean, look at Dark Shadows, putting his hand in the face and seducing a person, or putting them under a thrall. Well, then he finally bites into her and whatnot, and you get the blood dripping down her back, which is a great touch. This is actually, sorry about the lighting, folks. This is natural lighting. But, well, at least you know I'm not a vampire with all this sunlight. But anyway, so you see the blood running down her back, and as she's moaning because she just got bit, it phases over to Charlie walking in, and the moaning still carries through a little bit as he's walking in. Now, there's this scene where Charlie's walking, or as he's walking in, to go to Jerry's house by himself. You see the window guards smacking against the door, and then you see this chair rocking by itself. If you pay close attention to the bottom of the chair, you can actually see the strings that are used to make the chair rock. And these are just some of the cool practical effects that they have. That you also have freaking dry ice machines all throughout the gutters of this house, just pouring mist out, man. I mean, they're like, every time you look at Jerry Dandridge's house at night, there's just mist just rolling off of this thing. And this night is where there's a lot more mist coming off of it. So as he's getting ready to go in, somebody grabs him by the shoulder. And it's Peter Vincent. Peter Vincent, ready to do battle versus the undead. Peter Vincent, I'm serious. I am serious. Here, hold this. He has this whole box of goodies, man. He's like, yeah, cross the stakes, holy water, hammer, yeah. Cross. And, well, what about Billy Cole? How are you going to get by him? And he pulls a gun. This was from Orgy of the Damned. He's holding the gun, pointing it straight at Charlie, and Charlie moves his hand away. Well, what if he's not human? He walks around in daylight, doesn't he? Yeah? Well, then he's human. Come on. Peter, I want to thank you. You know what? I really want to thank you. Not now. So then he stops. He's like, what's wrong? Nothing. Nothing at all. So then Charlie's getting ready to go up into the front door. Are you crazy? We'll go to the back. We'll sneak inside. Well, then the front door opens. Too late. I am Peter Vincent, the great vampire killer. I am Peter Vincent, the great vampire killer. And he keeps on reciting that to himself. And it's like, oh my God, that is so hilarious. I got an itch on my back, folks. Sorry. There. Got it. So the door slams shut when they finally get in. I am Peter Vincent, the vampire killer. Oh my God, man. So then they're like, well, they're going up the stairs. And they're like, well, let's come back at dawn. And or he'll be asleep by then. And yeah, and Amy will be dead. So come on, man. I mean, you can see that he doesn't really want to be there. So then when they start trying to talk it again, you see Dandridge rolling up or walking along, and you hear the scraping noise, and you see one of his long vampire fingernails is scraping the wood, and you see the splinter of the wood just kind of turning as it's getting scraped. And he drops the line, "Welcome to Fright Night." Comes down for real. Carson is there, and he's like, "Where's Amy?" "Oh, she's up here. All you have to do is get by me." And he does that, signaling somebody off screen. And so, well, Peter Vincent's gonna give his bravado. "Back, spawn of Satan!" The laugh that Chris Sarandon gives off is just so freaking hilarious. "Oh, really?" Then he just drops all pretense, his fully serious face, grabs a cross and crushes it, pulls it to the side. "You have to have faith for this to work on me, Mr. Vincent." Throws the cross out and takes one step forward. Well, Charlie does have faith. And he pulls his cross out, which is a lot smaller, but still effective. And, well, this is actually pushing Dandridge back. He's thralled out, walking back, moaning like, "Oh!" I'm like, yeah, what? So he's like, "We're gonna make it." Well, then there's Billy. Crack! Just backhands him off the frickin' over the banister of the stairs. And you see Peter Vincent's like, "What the hell?" And, well, then there's Jerry putting his shoulder over Billy Cole, and, well, Peter Vincent just runs out. He's like, "Ah, ah, ah." He's just hysterical, not with laughter, but hysteria. He's terrified. He runs over to Mrs. Brewster. "Mrs. Brewster! Mrs. Brewster! Operator, give me the..." Phone lines are cut. "Mrs. Brewster!" He goes up. Well, Mrs. Brewster's in bed. "Mrs. Brewster, oh my God, the phone lines have been cut." And it's literally Evil Ed with a Raggedy Ann mop of hair on his head. "I know. I did it. Where's Charlie's mother?" "Well, apparently she's working nights, but she left a note." And he's like really excited, reads it. "Oh, his dinner's in the oven." Yeah! And he's just terrifies Peter Vincent, and Peter Vincent runs out of that room with his arms up, scared and all that, falls over, and then he hears his growling. Now, this wolf scene is fucking weird, man. You get the wolf coming out, just panting, it's all nice and friendly, and then the next scene that shows the wolf really fucking mean with the glowing red eyes. And then you get the fucking like 30 seconds of this wolf just running towards him in a slow gallop, eyes on each other, and takes like freaking 20 seconds for this damn wolf to finally freaking jump at him. He stabs the thing because he also fell into the banister. He picks up a broken piece of wood, stabs it through the wolf. Now, it's probably a little more weird because considering what Stephen Jeffries did after this movie. Yeah, Stephen Joffrey. But anyway, now get this, folks. How did Evil Ed get into the house? After you're a vampire, you need to be invited into a house. He wasn't invited into the Brewster's house. So how did he get into the Brewster's house? That is a massive plot hole. You know? So, when Peter Vincent stabs the wolf through the heart and then goes over and whatnot, you hear this, all these noises, and you see the wolf is trying to claw its way over. This is a real wolf, or a dead wolf with a bloodied stake through it, and you could see the strings pulling this wolf out of shot. Now, they're very thin, but you can see them. And then you see the reconstitution that he's turning back from human to wolf. One hand is more, or arm and hand is more thicker like mine, and another is bone thin, the one that's trying to pull the steak out. And you get this kind of half man, half wolf kind of face with the burnt scar over his forehead. And it looks like something from The Howling, you know? Kind of in one of those creepy ways, or one of the sequels to The Howling. But anyway, he's reaching out for compassion, but when he stands up to fall over, you can actually see the performer's arm like this behind his back, because they had a more thin arm holding the steak, a more monstery, thin, bone-thin arm holding the steak so that he could fall over and then whatnot. And then you see it's Stephen Joffrey's, who has this weird, more monstrous kind of face, looking for sympathy and whatnot. He's dying, and you see how Peter Vincent's reacting. I mean, Peter Vincent's kind of sad because this is a young man dying before him. And then he snaps back to himself after, or they cut away from it after Evil Ed supposedly dies. I look at it as Evil Ed, he doesn't care about the rules. He's a vampire rule breaker. Except that if you try, or they actually explain what happens in folklore if a vampire is not invited into, they literally can't break the barrier of the house. And if a vampire is caught inside of a barrier that he has not been invited in, he goes through racking pain until he gets out of that, or until he is excised from the barrier. That's how it is. The Vampire Diaries actually covers that quite well. What happens if a vampire is somewhere where they're not invited? Well, it becomes very painful for them to the point where they will do anything to get out of there, you know? So, that is a big mistake that he'd never been invited in after he became a vampire. So now we see that they toss Charlie into the room with Amy. Now, Amy's hair, folks, if you've seen Fright Night, Amy's hair is the biggest inconsistency in this movie, especially in the last act, where he's like, here, throws a steak down, you're going to need it just before dawn. He pulls Amy aside to see that the vampire face and her eyes are all blacked over, but her hair is brown and curly. However, when Peter Vincent finally finds his courage, goes back over, gets on in there, Amy's hair is still curly, but then they break the door down, and after they get out of there, after alerting Jerry, and you see Jerry's looking through the window at him, after they leave, it cuts down to Amy, and her hair is long and red. And it's like, what? And then it cuts back to her again, and her hair, or when Jerry's trying to wake her up to kill them both, her hair is not red again. It's back to the curly state. And then when Peter Vincent goes back, her hair is red, long and red again. How you doing, Jet Sparks? This is actually Fright Night that we're talking about, not From Dawn or From Dusk Till Dawn. But yeah. So Amy's hair is the most inconsistent thing I've ever seen. And you get all these great practical effects where you see Jerry Dandridge floating up to the window when Charlie is going up to the roof because he knows that he's up on the roof, and Peter Vincent went to check on Amy, shows across to her, so she freaks out, and then he locks her in the room. How you doing, Vanja? Good to see you. Marcy Darcy, LOL. Yeah. And so then we get to the part where he's trying to warn Charlie, and you see Peter Vincent rolling up to the window or kind of floating up to the window. And when Charlie runs over, you see him move off to the side to get out of shot. He's like, he's going downstairs. Well, then Amy's banging on the door, and then you see the stuntman of Jerry Dandridge come crashing through the big sun window at the top of the stairs. Now, if you pay attention to that where he crashes through, you could see the face is different. You could see that he's wearing gray sneakers instead of gray dress shoes like Jerry was wearing. And other thing, and it's like, yikes. So then we get a nice little confrontation between Peter and Jerry. And he's like, all right, stay back. And he holds up Dinner's in the Oven. Yeah, that one. And you just missed that one when I was discussing it. But thank you for stopping in, Jet Sparks. So he holds up the cross, and you see Jerry's like, eh? And then he starts laughing maniacally. You have to have faith for that to work on me, Mr. Vincent. Remember? Well, this is where Peter Vincent finally gets his faith back. And he actually starts or reaffirms his hold on the cross. And Jerry starts to react. He's like, and then that's when the clocks go off. And Dawn is coming up behind him. You are out of time, Mr. Dandridge. Look over your shoulder. And Jerry's like, ah! I mean, it's like, ah! The way that he does it. Ah! It is freaking hilarious, folks. If they did this stuff in today's films, it would be considered a comedy. So then he turns and he starts screaming, and when the sun reflects off the broken glass and hits him in the shoulder, he drops down, and then you see him turn into the bat. With the digital stuff was the shadow of the man turning into a bat, and then you see the bat attack Peter Vincent. This is one demonic-looking bat, man. Now, one of the funny things is the bat that flies at Peter Vincent, not the one that gets a hold of him, but the one that's flying at him is different, and it has been used in another film beforehand. A lovely film from 1984, which is a cult classic, but also renowned today. It was Ghostbusters. The face, that demonic-looking face from the librarian in the beginning of the movie, was used and reformatted to fit the face for the bat, the demonic bat flying through. Now, I actually like the practical effects that they use for this bat. I mean, it's pretty cool. But there's also another seriously continuity error, miscontinued error in this film, where he's trying to hold back this bat, and it cuts his face, cuts the side of his face, and throughout the rest of the film, you do not see the cut on his face. It's like, damn, dude, what are you? Are you a vampire? Because you healed awfully quick. So I also like when they pull the bat's face into the sun. You see the green flame kind of pouring off of it a little bit, and then it flies down into the basement. Well, they finally get down there, and they're looking for Jerry Dandridge's coffin. And Amy comes down. Now, the actress who plays Amy shows her range in this film, because they show how as Amy, human Amy, is very meek. She's an innocent, really. She's kind of a very innocent character that does have her angry moments. But as a vampire, she now has flowing red hair, and her eyes are different, and she has fangs and whatnot. And she's trying to seduce Charlie It's not really working. She goes after him. He puts the cross up. And then, we end up getting this look of Amy. Chrome tab, max res default, share. We get that. Isn't that pretty? I mean, the makeup effects for vampires in this movie could have been easily redone to fit the 2021 Mortal Kombat film. They could have made this Melina. I mean, seriously, folks. They could have easily made this into Melina. But they didn't. So, yeah. I mean, she starts attacking Charlie, and then he also while Peter Vincent found and is opening up the coffin to Jerry, and Jerry's just waking up. Now, he's about to hammer him. There's another mistake in this film where the stake that he's about to hammer into Jerry is tucked into, well, I'll use this poster here. It's actually tucked into the crook under the arm. And when he starts hammering it, he's hammering the crook under the arm, not his heart. So it's like, oh my God, are you serious right now? And then when he comes up like the vampire where he's flat down, coming up like this, he's still holding the stake under the crook of his arm. And you see that Amy's going like this because her master might be dead. She doesn't want to see her master die until he pulls it out, throws it, and opens up one of the chips open one of the glass windows. And then Jerry starts going after Peter Vincent and Ernest until Charlie tries getting towards that thing. I love how Charlie completely discards all of his love for Amy when he takes one of these statuesque-looking things, smacks it over his head, or smacks it over his shoulder, cracking Amy in the head, and she's like, oh! It's like, oh, damn, dude. Really? Damn. You just literally had no care cracking it right over her head. It's like, shit. I mean, did you, lose all love for Amy at that moment? But, opening up all the sun, we get the sun beating on Jerry for a moment. And then he goes running back to his coffin. And Peter Vincent closes the coffin. And this scene was just hilarious for some weird reason. Closes it, and he's like... And he just looks up at Peter Vincent like, you motherfucker! But now I got you. And I'm going to kill you. And Charlie ends up running around Jerry. Jerry doesn't just grab him right then and there is beyond me, but he's ready to go, yeah. And then they let the sun in and he gets blasted over to a wall. They hold down Amy while he starts melting. That is some of the coolest effects, by the way. The death of Jerry Dandridge in this film is one of the coolest freaking effects where you have the demonic skeleton going like this with its head and freaking face melt or face like crinkle melting like paper and the green flames and the sparkless flames and whatnot. And then he dies and everything's back to normal. And Amy, whose hair was blood red and poofy, is now back to its normal curly state. And all is well. Vampire's dead. Shit's gone back to normal. They're laughing, or they give each other hugs, and then they go back to, or they cut to some indeterminate amount of time later, where Peter Vincent's back as the host of Fright Night. And Amy and Charlie are making out on the bed again, like in the beginning. Well, this time they're on the bed doing it. And Peter Vincent's like, I decided to give the vampires a rest for a while. Right, Right, Charlie? Gives him a wink. And he then lets them in on a movie from Mars Wants Flesh. And it's some weird octopus aliens going after people, which I do not star in. Well, he got his contract renewed so that they can promote other horror films, not just the ones he's in. So yeah, they turn off the TV and he looks over at Charlie looks over at Dandridge's place. He sees these two glowing eyes that immediately shut off or disappear really quick, and he's kind of terrified. He's like, what the hell's going on? Charlie? Something wrong? Nothing. And so he jumps on the bed and they start getting it on and whatnot. And they go back to the shop of Dandridge's place and you see the eyes turn back on, or the eyes open up again. And it's Evil Ed. Oh, you're so cool, Brewster! And it ends. Credits roll. Now, this movie I thoroughly enjoy. As much as I pointed out the errors to this film, I still really enjoy Fright Night. As I said earlier in the stream, this is the first movie that introduced me to boobs. Bare boobs, by the way. And you know what? This movie is also a good, scary movie. It has a great horror element to it. In case anybody wants to know, I don't know where you can find it streaming, but check out the documentary You're So Cool, Brewster, that talks about the entire franchise of the good movies. Yeah, nice. I will check it out. Junebug. But the way that I watched this movie was because it's on my digital library. I got it off of Vudu. I also have the DVD, or Blu-ray rather. But one of the things I really like about Fright Night is it does have a good horror element to it that still holds up today. It's horror done right. They use practical effects for these things that works. It really does work. And there's a freaking fly around here flying around. But this movie had great cast, great acting for the most part. I mean, Stephen Joffrey just goes over the top with his, oh, you're so cool, Brewster, stuff and whatnot. But the movie is done well. Yes, there are some continuity errors that I picked through this entire film, and other errors revealing mistakes and whatnot. So objectively, this movie is about an 7.5 to 8 out of 10. This movie has its flaws, but they barely affect the film. However, objectively, they are objective flaws. So yes, 7.5 out of 10. Subjectively, this movie is a 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. There's some a little bit over the topness that could have been a little bit different. But for the most part, I really enjoy Fright Night. I absolutely love it. It's not perfect, but I love it. And moviegoer, if you love movies at night that are good, old 80s horror movies, this one's for you. It's a 10 out of 10. So the hints for next week. Actually, I might not be doing a stream next week. I have family coming up, family I haven't seen in many years. So I would like to spend some time with them. So I might not have a stream Tuesday or next Tuesday or Wednesday or anything. However, I do have a stream tomorrow and sometime Friday for guest choice reviews. But I will drop hints for the next mystery review now. I don't know when it's going to be. It's probably going to be 2 weeks from now. But the hints are Michael Caine and Christopher Nolan. I'm not going to make it easy on you guys. There's a lot of movies that Christopher Nolan did that Michael Caine are in. So if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. I'll see you then. Good luck. God bless. Stay tuned for tomorrow where I go with the writer C.S. Johnson, where we're going to be discussing Josie and the Pussycats for a guest choice review. I haven't seen that movie in forever, but I saw it back in like 2004 on TV. It was nuts. It's not something I would usually watch, but it's something that I'm willing to discuss with the guest choice reviews. Like I said, if you want to pick whatever movie you want to watch it, whether it be a chick flick or whatever, I'll watch it and review it with you and whatnot and go over it. So yeah, if you want to be a part of guest choice reviews, you get to choose the time, the date, the movie. All that I choose is where it is, and it's on my channel. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Junebug, Jet Sparks, who else? Vanja, thank you so much. Tabletop Junkie, thank you for tuning in. All right, folks, that's going to be it. Y'all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think of Fright Night? The original Fright Night. Did you like it? Did you not? What'd you think of the reboot, the 2010 reboot with Colin Farrell and crap, I'm blanking on the kid's name. The one that sadly passed away. But he played what's his name in Star Trek, the Russian kid. I'm forgetting names now, folks. Jesus. Anyway, folks, have a good night or day. Enjoy the day. And have a wonderful day. I just said that in several different ways. Anyway, folks, this has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.